In a season chock full of well-regarded sequels like Frieren and exciting adaptations like Sentenced to be a Hero, Journal with Witch somehow managed to grab my attention with its incredibly grounded and melancholic first episode. This anime is about an antisocial writer, Makio Kodai, taking in her high school-aged niece, Asa Takumi, after Asa's mother passes away. The two must learn to live alongside one another while Asa comes to terms with the death of her mother. On its own, the premise may not be enough to grab the average viewer's attention, given all the other eye candy airing this season, but what hooked me about Journal with Witch is the non-linear storytelling in its first episode. Episode 1 covers the first 3 chapters of the manga, starting with the settled lives of Asa and Makio 3 years after living together. In the second chapter, we jump back to the very beginning, when Makio asks Asa to live with her. Then, in chapter 3, the two learn about each other's lifestyles, and Asa begins to write in her journal. So the order of events originally is the end, the beginning, and the middle. The reader is dropped in medias res, a term meaning in the midst of things. This taste of the future whets the appetite of the viewer, and Asa's poetic descriptions of her relationship with Makio invites intrigue. The manga then functionally becomes linear. This is the appeal of starting with the conclusion. The author omits just enough detail to catch curious readers while providing just enough context about the ambience and personalities of the leads to inform viewers of the show's style. So it may surprise you that the anime doesn't subscribe to this order. In episode 1, we cover chapter 1, then chapter 3, and finally chapter 2. The end, the middle, and the beginning. Well, it's more like you are inserting chapter 3 into the middle of chapter 2, but anyways. After Makio and Asa meet, they attend the funeral and wake of Asa's mother. As Asa tunes out the pitiful comments her extended family whisper to one another, the show cuts to the events of chapter 3, where Asa awakes in Makio's apartment for the first time, and they begin to learn more about one another. After being introduced to journaling and struggling to grasp a way to express her feelings, we go back to chapter 2. Asa is brought out of her stupor by Makio loudly calling her name. Asa begins to cry, and Makio invites Asa to live with her. So why would the anime make this change? My first thought is that the anime must make a conscious decision on how to fit enough content from the manga into one neat episode. Even so, it's a bold choice to suddenly insert a future moment into the present. The challenge of operating out of order is that there needs to be some form of continuity. Otherwise, the viewer will be lost. If that continuity is not governed by time, it must be governed by something else. Linda J. Cowgill, in her book Secrets of Screenplay Structure, discusses how all great non-linear films utilize a framing action that helps strengthen overall dramatic unity. Framing action is any sort of goal, tension, or feeling that orients the viewer instead of time. For Journal with Witch, that framing action comes from Asa's emotional state and the show's tension. First, what do I mean by tension? It's about the buildup of emotions and the anticipation for catharsis. Makio's bold declaration and Asa's tears have moved to the end of the episode, putting the climax of the episode closer to the back in order to leave the most impactful impression. In addition, by adding the contents of chapter 3 in the middle of the scene in chapter 2, the show effectively increases the time spent on rising action or the conflict. It builds tension as the viewer watches Asa struggle to find words for this new feeling. That anticipation makes the climax of the episode hit that much harder and leaves the viewer desperate to see what happens next. There's nothing wrong with the way the manga arranges the story, but the changes made in the anime gives it a little extra punch while also making the best use of the 24-minute episode duration. Even without time, the viewer is pulled along by the gradual heightening of Asa's mental state and rewarded with her outburst at the wake. Another way to follow through the story is through changes in Asa's mental state. In the manga, chapter 2 plays out as follows. Asa begins to drown out the whispers around her with nonsense, and is brought out of her daze by Makio noticing and calling her name. In response, Asa suddenly asks for the kanji for basin and begins to cry as she realizes her life has irrevocably changed. It's a sudden shift in emotion, but is foreshadowed from a few pages ago when Asa admits not knowing if she is sad, and Makio tells her that Asa can let it out when she feels compelled to. In the manga, there's a lack of rising action that builds anticipation for the climax, Asa's tears. Instead, the suddenness of the tears takes the focus, demonstrating how grief can come for us at any moment. And the basin becomes a throwaway word. It's a nonsensical stray thought that Asa was in the middle of expressing before she is overcome with emotion. In this order, the manga emphasizes Asa's epiphany that she is sad. Here's where the anime presents another way of telling the story. After Asa begins to disassociate, we cut to her being discombobulated by her new surroundings in Makio's apartment. As Asa and Makio navigate their new living situation, a small amount of tension and discomfort begins to build from their differences. Eventually, Asa attempts to try writing about her feelings in the journal, but cannot find the words. The lines in her notebook become lines in the sand as she finds herself metaphorically in a desert. The dryness symbolizes a newfound void in her life, the restlessness that cleaning the apartment cannot satiate, the absence of sadness over her mother's death, her loss for words. The arid desert represents Asa's emotional state, and that need to fill the hole in her life is described as thirst. She yearns for a basin full of water. She completes the analogy, and then she is pulled out of the desert by Makio's words, and we are back in chapter 2 of the manga. When Asa now asks how to spell the word basin, the question and word choice is laden with that desperation. The meaning of her tears changes from an abrupt onset of anguish to a culminating realization that she is empty. The framing action becomes how Asa struggles to come to terms with their mother's death and how she can't quite find the way to cope with this emptiness and loneliness. In rearranging the events of the story, the context and the interpretation of Asa's line in chapter 2 shifts. This becomes particularly important because of the word Tarai, which carries more meaning than it first appears to. First, the term features prominently in a Japanese idiom, Tarai Mawashi, meaning essentially to pass the buck along. It's a phrase for eschewing responsibility and specifically focuses on the plight of the victim who everyone is giving the runaround. Her relatives continue to pity Asa's loss, but refuse to take up responsibility for her until Makio steps in. In addition to supporting Asa, Makio also explains that the kanji for water basin is written as water inside the kanji for mortar, and on top of the kanji for dish. Kanji is a writing system that not only tells you pronunciation, but also meaning or emotion. Makio describes two of the character's components as mortar, but the etymology of this character refers to the mortar as hands. And so, Tarai can be read as to wash the hands, which evokes connotations of ritualistic purification. Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples will have a Temizuya near the entrance where visitors can go to a basin full of water and wash their hands before continuing onwards. This ritual is meant to spiritually purify people and to clear their hearts and minds before praying to deities. Asa describes her current psychological state as an empty desert, but these feelings weigh heavily on her. She asks herself why isn't she sad and why she can't find the words to express herself. She feels empty, but her mind space is in fact full of sand that makes it difficult to navigate her thoughts and emotion. One way of looking at this situation is that Asa is asking for a means to achieve mental clarity. She wants to know if what she feels is normal. She wants to know what to do next. She wants to wash her hands of this whole mess. The reordering of events in Journal with the Witch accomplishes two things. It changes the structure of these three chapters, increases the continuous duration of the rising action to elevate the conflict, and strengthens the impact of the climax. And it recontextualizes Asa's line at the climax by drawing more attention to it and expanding upon the meaning of the word water basin. It's a realization that would never have been possible without the anime making such a drastic change in its narrative. Chronologically, these details could have easily been overlooked, but the intentionality of this choice really demonstrates how far the team behind Journal with Witch are willing to go, not letting a single word go to waste. When it comes to stories, even time is merely a tool at the disposal of a great writer or director.